Stewart for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Ian Lee, Professor of Sprott School of Business. Professor Lee, thank you for taking the time to meet with the committee today. I've been looking forward to asking you questions all weekend. Is it true that you were trying to warn people that we should be watching for inflation at the same time government was worried about deflation?
Yes. I lived through it in the 70s. I lived through it in the 70s. And we experienced that throughout the 70s. And central banks and senior decision makers were saying, look, it's under control. It's under control. And in fact, wage and price controls were declared in 6 and 5 in 1974. And then when they were taken off, it kept ratcheting up. And we know where it ended. It ended, and I was the mortgage manager of the fourth largest branch of the Bank of Montreal in Canada, Ottawa main office. You, House of Commons, went and bought that building, by the way. It's now the Parliamentary Reception Centre. I worked there when rates were at 20%. And I'm not suggesting we're going to 20%. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just simply saying that when you let the genie out of the bottle, and I'm talking the inflation genie out of the bottle, it's very difficult to put the genie back in the bottle unless you take quite draconian measures. And that's not an opinion or a theory. We can look at the 70s and where it ended up in 1980. And it took interest rates at 20% with Paul Volcker. And it caused the worst recession in North America since the Depression. So yes, there are solutions to inflation, but they're very, very painful. And sometimes I think it's much better to be preemptive and say, don't let the genie out of the bottle, hit it before it's taken off, because if we postpone and kick it down the road, it will be worse. The solutions will become worse.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Can you please explain to the committee, I guess you've already explained how you saw it coming because you've experienced it in your lifetime. Were there certain market conditions that you've seen currently that drew the comparisons to your prior experience?
Well, I mean, what we saw in the 70s, and I don't want to get into that who caused it, because I don't think that's fruitful. I don't believe Canada caused the inflation of the 70s, but I do believe, and there's many I think that believe, that we exacerbated it. I don't believe that Canada caused it this time either, by the way. We know as global supply chains being disrupted by the pandemic. But governments can contribute to inflation by pouring huge amounts of monetary stimulus and fiscal stimulus. I mean, Milton Friedman won, I know some people don't like him, but, he was an extraordinarily distinguished professor at the University of Chicago. He won a Nobel Prize for this very issue, showing that inflation has is hugely influenced by monetary and fiscal policy. And so throughout the 70s, we were pumping billions of deficit financing into the economy. Well, the economy was growing. I mean, I understand the argument. I'm a very Keynesian. When the economy collapses, goes over the cliff, you spend money. Sure. But we were spending money throughout the 70s when the economy was growing at 6 and 7 and 8%. Just like right now, we've got the economy growing stronger than before COVID, and we're pumping billions of dollars in. And we've recovered all the jobs. And that's why the PBO director said there's no economic reason now remaining to do the stimulus. So, I'm just being evidence-based on the data and the numbers that we can see and measure.
Appreciate these comments. So I guess, should we really be spending an additional $70 billion in regards to Bill C-8 with the new economic stimulus?
No, I'm very worried about it. And, I have no dog in this hunt, to use Bill Clinton's famous phrase. I don't belong to any political party. I don't consult anybody. Nobody can, I teach at Carleton. I do research. And so my point being that, and I'm very much following Anne McClelland. I thought her comments were absolutely spot on. We got to pivot now. Change. Okay, we did what needed to be done when COVID came along, but now we've got to focus on growth. We've got to generate growth, which will generate tax revenues to pay for these social programs, to pay for healthcare. We've got a lot of demands on our plate. We know that. There's people here advocating more spending. Okay, well, we need the growth to pay for it. And again, I just want to keep reminding everybody, people think, we can solve our shortage of workers with more immigrants. I think I strongly support immigration, but I think that we can't we have to be prepared for the idea that immigration may start to slow down, and we need more workers. The million shortages is going to get worse post-COVID. It's not going to get better.
Ian,
Thank you. And thank you,